Hey folks, getting near the end of when we'll be wrapping up for the line. This will be our second last video, we think, of this year. The plan is after this one to do one more and then to go on vacation. There's one wild card though. Jen and I have been kicking around the idea of doing one more live event where we'll just get the broadcast going. We'll have some drinks, we'll have some snacks, and we'll invite all of you to participate. We don't have any details on this yet, but one of the things we'd actually been talking about maybe doing this about, Jen, was inflation. Invite on some of our economist friends. And I just want to mention this. We are filming this on a Thursday afternoon. This is typically what we do. The United States is releasing its latest inflation numbers tomorrow on the Friday. By the time the viewers see this, this will be old news. Like the numbers will be out. I was just running errands a few minutes ago in my car, and I was listening to one of the news stations in Toronto, and I heard, and I went, whoa, that the expectation for tomorrow could be U.S. inflation near 7%. I don't know, maybe that's wrong. Maybe the market's nervous. Maybe that's completely transitory. But what's been incredible in recent weeks is how all talk of short-lived, temporary, transitory is gone. And you and I have talked about that in our videos repeatedly. That language
is, in the last 3 weeks, the tone has totally shifted. Everybody's gone from, you guys are just being paranoid, you guys are just freaking out, this is transitory, to suddenly being like, well, maybe it's not so If it's 7%, I think that's higher than it's ever been in my lifetime. I can't remember it ever being 7%. And what that will do is I think that that's going to spark a bit of a panic cycle which will push inflation higher because everybody will start demanding higher prices in anticipation of higher inflation. I actually think that we could be on the precipice of a weird cycle.
Well, I was talking on my radio show just a few days ago, Ian Lee, Carleton University professor at the Sprott Business School there, and he's one of my regulars on the radio. And we were talking a little bit about he said basically there are three things that drive inflation. He said one of them is monetary policy. If the government prints too much money, you could have inflation. The other one,
which we have,
probably. The other one is supply side issues, which we also have right now.
Which we also have.
We have constraints in the amount of goods, housing, fuel, consumer goods, and that is driving up the costs. The other thing, but we have both of those things right now. We don't know what the mixture is. We don't know which one is responsible for how much. The other thing, though, that can cause inflation is when it becomes psychologically entrenched. When I think there's going to be inflation next year, I go to all my clients and I say, you guys need to bump my rate 5% so I don't lose ground. And they go, no problem, Matt. And then they raise their prices for their customers 5%, all of whom have expected that and have already raised their prices 5%. The central banks can stop this, but if it becomes psychologically entrenched, you're going to have to nuke it with interest rates.
Well, and also I kind of wonder if all of those people claiming that all the transitory is inflation, all the experts say calm down, inflation is transitory, not transitory is inflation, inflation is transitory, actually has set people up to believe that the inflationary cycle isn't transitory because everybody's lost faith in the experts to such a degree that they're like, well, if the experts are saying this is temporary, it certainly isn't. Stock the fuck up.
That's the concern I have. And I've said this to you before. I said it on these videos. I am not a conspiracy-minded person. I am generally within the mainstream consensus, and I have lost faith in the experts because the risk to Canada is low.
My husband went to Walmart the other day and saw a 10-kilogram bag of flour for $10. He's like, yep, we already have 30 kilograms of flour in our cold storage room downstairs. He just grabbed more because it was there.
Well, your husband's a smart guy. This could be a total random aside because I know
also really likes my bagels.
Yeah, well, we all love your bagels. I was at Costco a few days ago. I made the mistake of going on a Sunday. This is probably nothing. This is probably the fact that I was there on a Sunday a few weeks before Christmas. I haven't seen it that packed since the panic right before COVID hit. So that I thought was interesting.
Going to Costco has kind of become my code word for things are about to get bad now. So it's becoming like every single time I see bad news, I'm like, find a Costco gift. Like, let's go Costco.
Yep. Speaking of the experts, and I have it here on my notes, a note that just says continued dysfunction, which we talked about this last week. I wrote a column about this either last week or the week before. We still haven't figured out the airports. I think we're getting it better. Like, I think it is improving. But did you see the stories this week about like
the quarantine hotels where it's like, I haven't been able to eat in 2 days, and like I'm not allowed to take a shower, like just weird, basic. We're 2 years in. For fuck's sakes, get the military to build like a quarantine facility. They do it in 24 hours if we had any military left.
And they would also do a better job feeding people because they would have combat rations and medical personnel.
Yes.
Yeah, no, this remains the crisis we've seen from the very beginning of this pandemic, which is that in Ottawa, the ministers are like, well, I shall pull this lever of power. And then like in the field, nothing happens. It's the old joke, right? The levers aren't connected to anything. So I'll probably do a little quick blurby at the top, blending that with Omicron, just because we don't have anything new to say about Omicron. Since we did this last week, we don't have definitive information yet, but we also have another week where we haven't seen mass death sprouting where Omicron is.
It's a good sign. No,
it is a good sign. No, it is. We all knew Delta was going to be a nasty one when the poor Indians were throwing their bodies in the river because they couldn't build funeral pyres. Like it's not happening with Omicron. So I'll mention that. Bill 81, your neck of the woods. Great stocking stuffer for all your friends is a political party membership.
Yeah, this is just to do with bulk memberships. Now, I haven't read into the details of Bill 81. I had some people in Alberta ask me to write about it. Of course, this is interesting because we know there are sort of outstanding allegations that Kenney won the leadership 3 years ago, by essentially bulk buying memberships. And there was an RCMP investigation going into some of that chicanery, right? So they seem to be futzing with the law to make it easier to bulk buy memberships, and there was a really public split among the people who are not supportive of Kenney's leadership in the caucus. So I think 22 of his own caucus members voted against Bill 81. I need to look into more of the details on that one. I think it'll be a nice little blurb for the Dispatch. But once again, it's just, this is what you get when you have parties treat, regions as one state, one party rule, is that they can get away with anything they want. There's also an interesting correlation between separatist movements and corruption, or separatist ethos and corruption, because essentially what separatist movements do is they establish a small oligarchic elite who
the true keepers of the values.
They essentially become king shits of Turd Island, right? So you see a little bit of that going on in Quebec. I think you see a lot of that going on in Alberta. So it's interesting to watch. But anyway, Bill 81, I will do a little blurb on that.
I've got 2 notes on my list here. We actually don't have a ton to talk about today. You know what? Let me do the other one first. I'll do the other one first. Then we'll come back to the medley here. So you just mentioned Alberta. My neck of the woods here in Ontario. There's been an interesting back and forth happening this week, where there is increasing demand for widely available rapid tests, where you can have I've got a thermometer upstairs, right? And if my kid's like, oh, Daddy, I don't feel, thermometer. It's one of the little skin contact ones. Do they have a fever or not? Like, it's just like a basic thing that all parents need. I would love to have some COVID-19 rapid tests kicking around the house, because a few months ago, I had a nasty head cold that I didn't think was COVID, because I'd gotten it from someone else who had been tested and was negative, and ultimately it cleared up in like a day anyway. I would have happily licked the stick or peed on something or whatever you do with these things to get a quick result. These are available by the millions in Ontario, like that we have, and I mean Canada generally, but Ontario in particular has millions of them. And the government has been saying, oh, we've deployed them. But what that means is that they've transferred them to businesses, and the businesses aren't using them. I went to a local pharmacy today because I had errands to run, and I had to go to the bank. Very exciting stuff. And then there's a Shoppers Drug Mart just around the corner from it. So I went, okay. So I went in. I'm like, hi, I'd like to buy some rapid tests. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. I was like, oh, okay. They're like, we'll test you on the spot, but you can't buy rapid tests. And then they said, oh, unless you're a small business. And I'm like, well, I am a small business. I have 2 small businesses. I have my own personal freelance company, and I have The Line, and I have documents for both. So I was like, great, I will buy the Line Inc. We'll buy a few dozen.
Expense it.
Yeah,
Get our accountant now. Send me some.
I will send you your exact share of rapid tests in line with the
Perfect.
shareholder agreement, right? And they said, oh, you can't do it here. You got to go on the website. I was like, oh, okay. So I'll go on the website, and the website is like, click here to contact us. And all it is an email address where you email shoppers.
This is great.
But the pharmacist had told me, go to Rexall. They might do it. And there's a Rexall just down the street. So I mosey on over to Rexall, walking in like, hi, I'd like to buy some rapid tests. Like, oh, you can't do that. We don't sell them. Like, oh, okay. So I went on a website. I don't even remember what it's called. Ordered some rapid tests because they're going to be useful over the holidays. Like if anyone gets a cold or a cough or the chills, if we're going to an event at someone's house and they have someone who's immune compromised. Again, I don't know what you do with these things. Lick the stick or put something up your nose and shake it in gel, I think. But this is something we should all have 10 of these on our house by now.
Yeah, this should be a no biggie.
I've been asking around about why we don't have them, and this fits one of my meta theories of life. The line, of course, occasionally needs the services of lawyers because we have to get stuff vetted or approved or whatnot. However, so I love our lawyers, but one of my meta rules of life is that lawyers in general fuck everything up. There's a movie with Danny DeVito. I don't remember what it's called, but it says lawyers are like nuclear weapons. Everybody's got them, but you never want to use them. As soon as you do use them, they ruin everything. Apparently, one of the reasons we have not made proper use of rapid tests, I can't confirm this, this is just what someone told me, but it made so much sense, is that if you use a rapid test, which is a lower reliability than one of the lab-based PCR tests, using a test is a signal that there was grounds to worry that COVID-19 transmission might be a thing. And if you use the inferior instrument and someone ends up getting sick, you have basically not met your standard of care because you didn't use the available gold standard.
And do you want to know why that's so intensely fucked up as well? Is that again, this is another one of these examples where like the science is on your side, but you haven't actually thought through the problem. Like you haven't applied logic to the problem. And as we saw the same kind of thing with masks, is that they're looking at these tests and they say, well, the PCR tests are 98% perspective or effective at correctly identifying the test. And the rapid test is only 90% effective. And that's 8% difference. That's a huge difference. Okay, but the PCR test takes 1 to 3 days to get back. And the rapid test takes 15 minutes, even less than that. So what you're not factoring into these 98 versus 90% is time. And when you factor in time, the relative benefit of that extra 8% accuracy completely disappears because it takes you 3 days to get the goddamn results.
Yeah.
You are infinitely better off with a 90% test that gives you instant results than with a perfect test but takes 3 days because you could get COVID in the next 2 days.
You take you take the PCR test, it gets sent off, it's negative, but you don't find that out for 3 days. Meanwhile, in the intervening period, orgy to orgy. Like, I mean, that's what I would be doing anyway. And basically, after being exposed to hundreds of people, you get a test result going, on Tuesday, you didn't have COVID.
Yeah, and this is the major problem. Again, it's one of these people thinking about the problem so narrowly. And again, we saw it with vaccinations and the AstraZeneca vaccine, right? It's like you're looking at the problem so narrowly. You're not taking the importance of time into consideration in any of these decisions. And you're not thinking through the problems. You're thinking through the problems scientifically, but not logically. And as a result, we continually make these just bad decisions because we're trying to reduce our absolute risk to zero, at the meantime completely ignoring concepts like relative risk. It's baffling, it's infuriating, it's frustrating. You're absolutely right. We should be having, like, you know what? Nobody thinks twice about letting women have pregnancy tests, but if you get a positive test, you have to go to the doctor. But we understand that, like, yes, this test is not perfect. It's just going to give you a clue as to whether or not you need to go to the doctor. Like, God, I can't imagine the fights these people must have had over, giving women access to pregnancy tests back in the day, because I'm sure it was exactly the same thing.
The funny thing is, too, it's actually a really, really good example, because I mentioned it, when we did our election night live stream, I had that sinus infection. Like, it was miserable. Most of the people I knew in September or October in Toronto ended up getting the sinus infection. It was a nasty one. And it's basically what happens when, after a year and a half of like living in bunkers, we all come out and start mingling again, right? Like, germs propagate and our immune systems were all probably weak. I'm wondering how many lab-based PCR tests the Ontario government was on the hook for to tell thousands of people who have sinus infections that they had a sinus infection and not COVID-19, when we all could have just licked a stick at home. Or again, I think, what do you swab your nose and then put it? I don't know what.
Yeah, I think I got a it wasn't a rapid test, it was the NAT test when I was coming back from North Carolina. No, I got the rapid test when I went down. So the rapid test, I just went to my local pharmacy, and like it's not even like a full up the nose, it's like outer side of the nose. Yeah. So it's pick your nose depth.
Okay, well,
like that's fine. I don't feel like you're brain raping me, right?
Well,
it's not brain rape test.
That's the lab-based one where they go like right up into the sinus cavities, right?
Yeah, but even that, I don't think they do that much anymore. Like when I did the NAT test, it was self-administered, and it was again just in the nasal passage. So like I think that they're not doing the giant into like brain rape tests as much anymore.
Think of how many lab-based tests Ontario or any other jurisdiction could have spared itself if everybody had 10 of these kits at home. And it's like, oops, my nose is runny, I've got a sore throat or whatever. And you go, yeah, and then you shake it, and then you wait 10 minutes, and then it's like, no, you're fine. Or yeah, you're positive. Go to the local hospital. I mean, or pharmacies now in Ontario, you can do it. You can actually get
quarantine, or just
preemptively
quarantine.
Yeah.
Like, like it's just I don't know. This is just a classic, like I said, it's a classic example of government overreach, government trying to take control when it doesn't actually have the capacity to manage that control. And at the same time, just not thinking through the problem in a rational, sort of logical manner, and instead looking at it narrowly through a very scientific lens instead of a logical lens.
The interesting thing is, I agree with you. I agree with everything you just said there. What I find interesting is what we're talking about here, that sort of that risk averse, must always use the maximum level test. This is one of those examples where people who just go, oh, that's just a communications issue, are missing the point. Because I and you have been sharply critical of the federal response and the provincial response. And I know that blows partisan brains. It's like, wait, you're criticizing a liberal and a conservative? But I mean, I've been sharply critical of both conservatives in Ontario and liberals in Ottawa. You've been critical of conservatives in Alberta and liberals in Ottawa. And how many times have you heard from the freaked out partisan defenders of both, oh, what you're talking about is just communications? I agree, they don't communicate well, but they're doing a great job, they're doing the best they can. Communications matter.
Is 90% of the job they have to do.
Yes.
Like, if you can't communicate with people, it doesn't matter what you're doing behind the scenes.
Communications shape expectations. Expectations drive behavior. Behavior becomes reality.
Yeah.
And like this idea of, oh, don't worry, we just, yeah, okay, we have bad communications. And the funny thing is too, you and I have talked about this before, you can't find a journalist for hire right now, like someone who just got bought out.
If you can't do the basic communication stuff right, why should I have any faith in your ability to do anything else right?
Well, we also can't feed people at quarantine hotels, so I mean, it all tracks. But
yeah,
one of the problems we run into though is that we've made this joke before, like, the old saying, if you stare into the abyss too long, it stares back into you. So a bunch of journalists get bought out or laid off, or just decide for their own mental health reasons, which I get, to quit, right, journalism. And a lot of them get snapped up into government comms jobs. But instead of them coming in and being agents of culture change, and it's like, hey, we're gonna be the best government communicators that have ever been, what ends up happening,
they get absorbed by the cultures.
They get assimilated right into that little board collective. And the next thing you know, it's, hey, how many test kits have we ordered? 3 days later, hi, Matt, thanks for your inquiry. Yeah. Canadian government takes this matter very seriously. We remain fully like gobbledygook.
This is honestly why I have very little patience for journalists who go into comms, government comms. Like I have a lot of, if you're a journalist and you decide to opt out and you go into private comms, that's a bit of a different thing. But if you're going into government comms, I don't know, I find that you're not going to make it better, just so that we're clear.
Well, you'll work better hours and you'll get paid.
You'll work better hours and you'll get more money. You're doing something good for you, but like, you're not going to make the system better.
It happens so fast too.
It's so fast.
Like someone you were working with across
It's a
the
human
desk.
being and then ceased to be a human being. It's just
They get assimilated.
they get
Resistance is
assimilated.
futile. All right, so I will do rapid test versus lawyers. The only other items Olympics in Europe were both on my list. And I think we kind of blend these. So we talked about the situation in Ukraine last week, and Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin had a conference this week where I don't know. I mean, the appropriate talking points were recited, I guess. And then Olympics, which is I wrote a column in the Post about that this week. This just all feeds back into what I was talking about in my column here recently about our expectations are terrible. Like we just have unrealistic expectations. So we're lecturing the Russians, you know, if you send those 100,000 troops into Ukraine, we're going to sanction you. Yeah, okay, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But when I was talking about the fact that Canada and some of its other allies are diplomatically boycotting the upcoming games, but we're not athletically boycotting the upcoming games. And I'm just thinking, like, people, oh, well, we can't do that. It'd be unfair to the athletes. Tell that to the people in the rape camps or the pro-democracy Hong Kongers getting, you know, flogged and forced to read confessions here. I just want to see, like, honestly, I want to take a Canadian who makes the effort that boycotting the games is unfair to our athletes, which I agree with. It's unfair. The athletes are in this position. We could have found a way to avoid this. I really want to see one of these also so earnest Canadians who's only used to talking to other Canadians explain that to the guy whose family has disappeared into one of the Uyghur re-education camps in China, where, like, I'm sorry, we want to send a stronger message here, but we can't inconvenience our curlers. They've trained so hard.
They've trained so hard, man. It's just I would say first world problems, but the CBC has banned that term.
Really?
Yeah, apparently it's one of the words we're not allowed to say anymore.
Oh, I never clicked on that thing. I know everybody was outraged about that, but that to me was bait.
Oh, totally. But anyway, point being, yeah, I mean, it's just the profound lack of perspective that Canadians have on our problems, right? Like, you not being able to compete at the Olympics I don't care that much. I actually don't. Like, I realize that you've spent your life training for this and it's really sad and blah, blah, blah. And it just compared to what China's being accused of doing, it doesn't matter that much. Sorry, your feelings just don't matter that much.
I mean, if we had any balls, which, I mean, we don't, what we should have been doing, not just us, because, you know, look, I'm reasonable. I understand that Canada is a country of limited means here. We should have been working with our allies for months to go, you know what, we're having a free Olympics. We're gonna do it. In the United States will get some games, Canada will get some games, we'll do some in Britain.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be great, given how corrupt the IOC's become, if they could just create a competitive free free world Olympics?
Yes, the IOC is part of the problem, and this is why I said that the athletes do deserve better. They deserve better than the IOC.
Yeah.
And
you know what, like imagine if Calgary was like, no, we're going to host the first free Olympics to compete with the we're going to just, because I mean, this was actually a huge part of the reason why Calgary voted against hosting the next Olympics. They quoted us very hard. It's like, no, it's corrupt, and there's no way we'll make enough money to justify the expense that it will involve, and people just weren't interested in participating in the system anymore. But imagine if if the free world were to actually get together and be like, no, we're going to do a free world Olympics. We're not going to be pandering to any kind of authoritarian regime. You know, this is going to be, you know, countries that have legitimate democratic systems only. Thank you. You know,
I'm sure there would be some ranking you could immediately grab from Freedom House or Democracy House or the UN. I'm sure has transparency indexes that we just basically say, this is the cutoff. Countries that and wouldn't it be nice for the democracies to actually be asserting themselves on this front and kind of go, you know what, there are standards in the world.
But as opposed to like being so wrapped up in their own problems that our heads are so far up our ass that we just don't.
Our curlers, Jen, they've been practicing for years. How dare we do this to them?
I dare to do this.
I did get I got some responses. Glenn McGregor of CTV had said to me, yeah, but like, what about our farmers? Like, are you going to tell them not to sell their products to China?
Just so that you're aware, I literally did do that. Last week, I gave a talk at an agriculture conference, and we were talking about a political panel, and we brought the talk about China came up, and my advice, bold-faced, everyone in the room, was run. China has made itself really clear as to what it is, and like your business people, which means you're calculating your profits based on risk. So guess what? When the risk comes, when the bill for that comes due, when the risk becomes apparent, and China blocks your exports as they're still doing with canola, no one's going to cry any tears for you, and don't expect any government bailouts, because that was the risk you took. So yes, no, I don't think our farmers should be trading with China. I think that's a stupid risk.
Well, what
I told them so to their face.
How'd that go over?
Pretty silent room.
Yeah. What I said to Glenn was, you know what we could also do? We can just buy it all. The government of Canada can go, sorry guys, we're going to give you 1 year to transition. We're going to buy everything. We're going to donate it to the World Food Program. We're finally going to hit our foreign aid targets for a change. With the power of canola and pigs.
Also, like I don't even think that that's justified. I mean, these are major multi-million, if not multi-billion-dollar conglomerates. They're calculating these are not, family farms getting wiped out by China. These are like Viterra and Richardson and things like that. Like, these are companies that are making a calculated risk and have shifted their crops according to the risks that they have done for themselves. And if they can't take the political risk of China into consideration in making the decision about who they're trading with and what they're trading, I actually don't think that that's on the taxpayer. I don't think it ought to be in the taxpayer.
I would be willing to give the farming conglomerates a break, like once, if we made a sudden pivot in national policy. Like, that'd be fine.
Sure. Okay.
But I'm with you. Like, I said that to Glenn. I'm like, I think the farmers would welcome a way off dependence from China right now, because China's shown their card. The farmers know they're the hostages now. The Michaels are home. The farmers still have guns to their head.
Yeah.
Should we get snarky about this and actually turn this into a column? We could co-byline it. I mean, we'll still put something.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And I'm actually willing to say to the farmers, like, yes, you need to stop trading with China.
Why don't we put a blurb?
I'm sorry. We're really going to be the people who will tell you the truth, not like the Canada-China Council, Business Council. Like, you need to get out while the getting's good.
Go sell to someone else.
Sell to someone else. Make other decisions. There's lots of demand for agricultural products. Make something besides canola. Go get, like, I'm not saying you can cut off your dependence with China trade overnight. I get that.
Cut it in half.
Start transitioning now, because like, this is not going to, the global trade blocks are reasserting themselves, and we're not on China's block. We're not on that team. So get a grip, figure it out, make other decisions.
That is excellent advice and a great place to end this. I will do rapid tests, Olympics. I'll blend in a little Europe. You want to do a Bill 81, and do you want to do anything on inflation, or we just mentioned that? I mean, by the time we're doing this, writing this thing up on Friday, we'll have those numbers.
Yeah, I'll do inflation.
Okay.
And it just very well might be like, look, all of you people who've been telling us that inflation wasn't going to be an issue, I don't believe you, and neither does anyone else.
Shouldn't. All right. Well, on these cheerful notes, thanks, folks. Remember, one more of these videos to come next week, possibly a live event sometime in the next few weeks if we can organize it. And other than that, we will be on Christmas holiday soon. So cherish us while you have us. Have a great week.